Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, according to your time zone. I'm very happy to welcome our distinguished panelists today around this topic of One Health in the context of atopic dermatitis. I am Alain Tayeb, the president of the International Society of Atopic Dermatitis. We welcome together today with Pascal Prelot, my co-chair, the participants. We have more than 200 participants online, and the participation is very global, more than 50 countries. So thank you for coming to share this very interesting new topic in our field. I would like to thank very much the executive committee of the society, so namely Johannes Ring, our past president, Roberto Takaoka, our vice president, Peter Schmidt-Grendelmeyer, who is here also today, our treasurer, and Andreas Wollenberg, and also the rest of the board for helping us to organize this meeting. I think I got also Pascal Prelot, who made the connection with the vet community, and I think it's a real success. And also I want to thank Laurent Elgar, who is behind the screen and who is in charge of the technical organization. So I leave the microphone to Pascal.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my go-to thanks also a lot of people, and especially the ESAT for this second One Health exchange, because 2 years ago we did one of the treatment of atopic dermatitis, and now we'll speak about canine or other canine atopic dermatitis or other allergies and the link with environment. And I'm happy to see that almost half of the participants are vet dermatologists. And this is not surprising for me, because I think where we think that the genetics is the main problem for atopic dermatitis, and I'm sure that they will see today that there is not only genetics and that the environment is really important in the development of this disease, and we'll see that with the different presentation.
Thank you, Pascal. So I just need to say before we start that you can interact through the chat, and we collect the questions. There will be a few questions after each speaker, but most of the questions will be collected for the roundtable, which will be under the moderation of Johannes Ring and Peter Schmidt-Grendelmeyer, and all the panelists will participate. So I leave the microphone to Pascal to introduce our first speaker.
So our first speakers are two speakers, in fact. May I introduce you Bernadette Abela, who is a veterinary epidemiologist, so the first vet of the day. And she spent most of her research and professional life on the One Health concept adapted to a lot of different diseases. And she's now the leader of neglected tropical diseases at the WHO. And she will present a background on One Health concept applicability to complex diseases with her intern, Diana Minich-Panic. So let's go, please.
Wait, back to the first screen. Yeah. So good afternoon and good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here to discuss something that I think we have, it would be great to learn from each other. As you know, I've just been introduced. I'm Bernadette Abela. My work has been really focusing more on the infectious diseases, zoonotic diseases, and snake bites. So looking at more allergies and eczema and things like this is not really. So we've had to learn a little bit about atopic dermatitis and One Health, and what we'll do is just present to you, the umbrella thinking around One Health, and then with you see what is still needed, what can we do better, and what other collaborations that perhaps might not yet be in place are needed. So as you know, One Health is an integrating and unifying approach to looking at health, acknowledging that the health of humans, animals, plants, and the environment is all really interconnected. And so if we aim for a more sustainable balance, and if we want to optimize the health, we need to also acknowledge that health is interlinked and that we need interdisciplinary and intersectoral collaboration in order to be able to tackle problems in a more holistic way, and bringing value added of the different disciplines towards a single problem, but finding the different facets that can actually move us away or less towards only just treating symptoms, but going more towards prevention and control rather than treatment. Next one.
Bernadette, can you please put full screen the presentation?
Pardon me?
Can you please put full screen?
No, you're not on full screen.
Where is it?
Full screen.
So it should be display setting at the top, the second tab.
This one. No.
Okay. Can you see full screen yet? No.
On the top, display settings. On the top of your screen, it's the second tab, display settings. Top left.
We've got multiple screens, and so maybe that's
Yeah, okay, this one, display settings.
Display settings.
You select this first one. Thank you.
okay. I'm very sorry. So you probably have heard around about One Health. So I don't want to preach to the choir, but as health professionals, you will know that we have already started looking at One Health, covering multiple issues. When you think about antimicrobial resistance, or as I mentioned before, looking at the infectious diseases where the human, the animal, and the environment is interconnected. When we think around vector-borne diseases, where climate and the environment has an impact on vector populations and their distribution, and of course with disease spread. And if we think about our food supplies and foodborne diseases, when we think One Health, we're looking at a change in paradigm that we don't just consider one sector, but really trying to approach with multiple lenses. And then, of course, looking at and more on the environmental health side, which has been neglected in the One Health definition until just recently. So WHO, the Food and Agricultural Organization, the World Organization for Animal Health, and the United Nations Environmental Programme have actually come together to provide a sort of a global example of a way forward in tackling some of these very complex health issues. Is it easy? No. It takes a lot of negotiation and collaboration and will to actually work as, instead of individually, as a team to tackle these complex problems. Next slide. So just now shifting towards neglected tropical diseases, that's our area of work. These are diseases of poverty, those diseases that affect the most disenfranchised populations. And we have been looking at multiple of these health conditions also through a One Health lens. As you know, these populations usually share their environment very, very closely with animals that either provide food or livelihoods to their owners, and also they are living in the same shared spaces. So One Health, especially in the context of neglected tropical diseases, is very important. So recently, we have started a focus around skin entities rather than looking at individual diseases, but looking at a grouping of diseases. And so just recently, we have a skin entity group that looks at multiple etiologies of skin diseases. The thinking behind it being that people with skin conditions come to a primary healthcare center with a skin condition, and they're not saying, oh, I have leprosy, can you attend to it? Or I have leishmania, can you attend to it? It's looking at the skin as an organ and trying to look at ways to support communities and the patient in a very more holistic way, because these diseases cause significant morbidity and disability. And here below in the last line, you'll see some of the diseases that we actually consider and are included within the skin entities. And just recently, NOMA has been added into that list of diseases. So this is just to give you an example of where the neglected tropical diseases have started a group and have now got a working group looking at the skin entities from a One Health lens. However, I will say that we're looking at mostly the infectious diseases, right? As you see below. Next one. And with that, I hand over to my capable young intern who has been at WHO since December and has looked into the literature to sort of try to provide us with a foundation for a discussion today. And over to you, Diana.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So for this presentation, I did a landscape analysis of the current literature on the topic, and I have compiled a few points that I would like to share with you today. I just wanted to clarify that there is much to be learned about this subject, and here we have the opportunity to explore and to be inspired on what we can actually do to change something together. So what is atopic dermatitis? And I suppose that most of you already know what it is, so I'll be brief. So atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema, is the most common inflammatory skin condition that occurs in childhood, but can affect individuals of any age. It is also a very persistent condition where, due to its symptoms, it disrupts the daily life of an individual, sometimes also resulting in anxiety and even depression. Moreover, atopic dermatitis is considered the first manifestation of the so-called atopic march. Other atopic conditions such as asthma, allergic rhinoconjunctivitis, and food allergies follow the appearance of AD in atopically predisposed patients. So this multi-systemic involvement heavily affects the quality of the life of atopic individuals. Atopic dermatitis is not only specific for humans, but also pets suffer from it. And since pets have fur, the clinical presentation in animals can appear much more dramatic than in humans. So what actually causes atopic dermatitis? So going to etiology becomes more way complicated. I have personal experience with this topic because my sister has atopic dermatitis. So I know how much of a struggle it is for a patient, but also how frustrating it is for a doctor as well. So for some other diseases, based on the clinical presentation, you would know what the disease is and what specific treatment you need to cure it. But for others, you would also take like a swab and you would see either if it's a bacterial or fungi or viral. And again, you would have specific treatment to cure it. But for this one, it's all about trial and error and constant doctor appointments where the trigger can be pretty much anything from a singular thing to a whole combination of factors that trigger the disease. So you as a doctor would be going back to the drawing board until you find specific medication for each patient that will reduce eczema but not cure it. So most of the time, we end up just treating the symptoms and not the cause. And some patients even may lose faith in the doctor's ability to treat the disease and go on to switching more than 5 to 10 doctors. And AD is also a very expensive disease to treat, and some individuals don't even have the financial means to deal with their condition. And here I also want to underline the fact that more research is needed in prevention and understanding the actual etiological cause and the treatment choices that patients have. Moving on, now I want us to look at atopic dermatitis through One Health approach, and I want to make an example choosing these 3 factors. So the climate affecting the exaggeration of AD, the hygiene hypothesis as etiology of AD, and the pet hair or pet dander being one of the most common allergens that trigger AD. And to solving the root cause of this disease, we need a more holistic approach where we need to take into consideration all the possible etiological factors that may take place into causing this disease. So here, One Health gives us the most unique combined approach to solving such disease. So the first one, the hygiene hypothesis, is a theory that suggests the lack of early childhood exposure to infectious agents. Certain microorganisms and parasites lead to an increased susceptibility to allergic and autoimmune diseases later in life. So the hypothesis proposes that improved sanitation, reduced family size, and decreased exposure to infections in developed countries may contribute to the rise of allergic conditions such as asthma or eczema. Also, it suggests that early exposure to diverse organisms help to train the immune system, promoting its proper development and function. Next example is the climate affecting AD. So now with the change of the climate, we are being more exposed to extreme weather changes that can be triggering to the patients with AD. So such humidity can be very triggering for patients. Either high humidity can exacerbate atopic dermatitis symptoms. For some individuals, it can also lead to more sweating and more moisture retention from the skin and causing itching and inflammation. Also temperature, either extreme temperatures, extreme high temperatures or extreme low temperatures can aggravate atopic dermatitis. UV radiation, so sun exposure, can both have positive and also negative effects on the atopic dermatitis. So moderate exposure to sun can actually be beneficial for patients with AD, but excessive sun exposure can lead to the skin damage and actually worsening the eczema. And we have also allergens. So climate can influence the presence of distribution of the allergens such as pollen, mold, dust, and also seasonal changes, especially in the spring when everything flourishes. It can also impact people with atopic dermatitis. So example 3. We have exposure to certain allergens, including pet dander, can exacerbate the symptoms in individuals who are already predisposed to atopic dermatitis. Pet allergens such as proteins found in the skin cell or in the skin cells, urine, saliva of animals can act as triggers in people who are predisposed. And if someone with atopic dermatitis is allergic to pet dander, being in close contact with dogs, cats, or other animals may worsen their skin symptoms. However, exposure to certain allergens can exacerbate symptoms, but only in the people who are predisposed. And here, so the question that we need to ask ourselves is what lifestyle advices can we give to patients who have atopic dermatitis that can reduce the symptoms? So frequent cleaning of the living space is crucial, but also it says a question because it's controversial to the hygiene hypothesis. So here we have a bit of a controversy. Then regular grooming and bathing of the pets, creating areas where it's a pet-free zone in your household, and also avoid too much exposure. Then we have recent studies that show that air pollution can also be triggering for the patients with atopic dermatitis. So air purifiers are also a suggestion, and consultation with a medical health professional with people who are suffering from anxiety and depression due to the symptoms of AD, and nutrition is also a very important factor. So how can we apply One Health approach to atopic dermatitis? So now we're going to go full circle and see what can we actually take from this presentation. So atopic dermatitis is a complicated disease that requires a interdisciplinary approach. So modern day factors that can affect atopic dermatitis are psychological factors as well. Something like emotional stress can be a trigger. Lifestyle factors, now due to the fast living, bad diet, lack of sleep, stressful job, that also can be a very triggering thing for people who are predisposed. Then overall well-being of the individual, and also new environmental factors such as pollution. We have some studies showing that in areas where air is polluted, we have increased rates of the patients with AD. Also, another study shows that although traditionally thought that the lower prevalence of atopic dermatitis is in Africa compared to Europe, more recent studies have demonstrated that atopic dermatitis also occurs in increased frequency in children, as high as 31% in Ghana, which may possibly be connected to the increased urbanization. So, as with everything, it is better to prevent than to treat. And I would like to put an emphasis on the research towards prevention and creating personalized medicine. So we expect future research insights and therapeutic advances to widen physicians' ability to diagnose and manage atopic dermatitis patients, and even maybe to find a cure for this chronic condition. So I'm going to leave you with a few points for a possible discussion. So what data and research are needed to further help the patients with AD? Is One Health a valid approach to atopic dermatitis? And what strategy can be built to help healthcare providers better diagnose AD using One Health? And can One Health approach better help to mitigate the inequality between high-income and low-income communities when it comes to the treatment by improving prevention? That is all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We don't have too much time. Just one question, maybe. Just one remark as a vet. If you really bath a lot of dog, it will be so much stress that everybody will stress at home, and it will be terrible. And I see that for you, animals are a real problem. But I would like to know if we do not consider that now that living with a dog do not predispose to allergic disease, but do the opposite, in fact. A dog, not a cat.
Yeah.
You have the answer. So I think there are others on the panel who can probably better answer this question. The hygiene hypothesis basically says, expose to allergens, and then your body will be used to it and will react less. On the other hand, there are some recommendations that say, clean away as much as possible the allergens. So already there, I think there's a space for research. But as we sort of said in the beginning, this isn't also a new area for us to look at atopic dermatitis through a One Health lens. And so perhaps you can open it up to your panel.
Good, excellent. I think your second question is One Health, a valid approach to atopic dermatitis, is basically the background question of this symposium. And I think thank you for raising it. I think that maybe with the next speakers, we may have also some more practical aspects on to use this lens. But also I've seen some question in the chat, so I think we will probably address those questions in the round table. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our second speaker, Alexander Zink from Munich, Germany. Is one of the rising stars of dermatology, and because he has a very new approach of data mining using different sources of databases, and it's probably one of those links we are speaking when examining now through the One Health concept, atopic dermatitis. Please, Alexander.
Thank you for the kind introduction. It's my pleasure to be here and talk about the, for me, amazing field of data mining. And as always, I would like to start with an image. And for me, this is the most amazing figure of 2024. And have a look at it. It's the Google search volume of the American population. What area is interested in the topic of eyes hurt in the week April 3 to April 10? And you're probably gonna say, why is it this curve? But the answer is obvious. It's the curve, it's the line where the total solar eclipse was seen. And this would have been avoidable, but people got their eyes damaged and then they looked up for information online. And that's actually, it's not new. We as human beings, we want to have information and we can't blame technology. So 100 years ago in 1960, we were looking up information in the newspaper. Still, no one was talking to the other one, just we wanted to get the information. Today, it's the smartphone. And we use the smartphone or internet for continuously looking for information. And from a medical perspective, I think it's very, very interesting because it's a perfect tool to assess the digital patient journey and to get new insights into the complex interplay of disease, environment, society, climate change, and so on. And the digital patient journey is the way from the first symptoms of an individual. It's then often months or even years long way until the diagnosis is made and then the correct treatment is given. And this way, this patient journey is highly individual. Of course, it's within the comorbidities of this individual, but also it's within the individual environment he or she lives in. And then in the socio-cultural context, we can have a look at this digital patient journey. And it's interesting because all of us use the internet and social media on a regular basis. So in Europe, it's over 90% of the population which looks up information online. And from a medical perspective, to give you an introduction how good it works, this is the Munich population looking up information about hay fever from May 2013 over 4 years until May 2016. And as you can see, there are seasonal peaks, and always when the birch is in bloom in Munich in spring, a lot of people look up for information for hay fever, whereas in winter, basically no one is interested in the topic. And on a larger scale, you can compare countries, for example, and this is the cumulated web search interest of Sweden and Germany over 4 consecutive years in the month of April and compared to May. And as you can see in April, the areas of Stockholm and southern Western Germany are interested in hay fever, whereas 1 month later in May, no one is interested in hay fever in Germany anymore, but the northern parts of Sweden, that's where the birch then is in bloom, a lot of birch pollen, which is the main allergy in Sweden and in Germany. And then you have a perfect map. When do the patients, when is the population suffering from these symptoms? And another way, how can we use it to spread awareness, to raise awareness, and to identify unmet needs. But also in terms of atopic dermatitis, we see a clear seasonal interest of the general population in atopic dermatitis. And the interesting thing is that always in the cold month of January and then spring, February, March, and May, every year the interest peaks and it then goes down in the summertime when it gets warmer. And I will be there in a few slides later. But we can also assess what are the needs. And for Germany, over 4 consecutive years, we found out that half of the German population is interested in specific localizations of affected body parts. So as you can see, a quarter of all our patients are interested in AD affecting the face, then the eyes, then the hands, and then the head. So 50%, that's a clear focus, and maybe we can use this again for raising awareness, but also to specify the needs of our patients and then to address it on a population-based level. And as we heard in the previous talk, there are a lot of influencing factors on an individual level, which you can assess on a population-based level when you analyze what's going on online. And this is a very busy slide, and I don't want to take you through all of the details, but I just want to point out that we can assess what are people looking up, what kind of information are people looking up when they Google for information related to atopic dermatitis. And the majority is general information about the disease. Then there are also environmental influencing factors, also factors like pets, how does it influence the disease, and only 10% of the whole population interested in AD is interested in treatment option. And it gets even more fascinating or astonishing for us doctors when we see it's not about modern treatment the general population is interested in. Only a tiny proportion is interested in biologicals, but the majority is interested in home remedies. And that's something I think which needs to be addressed to raise awareness. What treatment options do we have to make to solve this unmet need, and to also to solve and counteract misinformation. You can also play around a little bit, and I don't want to open up the discussion, should we call it atopic dermatitis or atopic eczema? But based on a population-based level, we see that, for example, Sweden, Italy, and the Czech Republic, they prefer the term eczema, whereas, for example, the Iberian half peninsula, Spain and Portugal, or also the UK, they prefer the term atopic dermatitis. So again, raising awareness, we should then, or we could use this information to make it available for a broad part of the population. And in terms of environmental influencing factors, again, we can see a clear influence of the environment on atopic dermatitis, assessed with a population-based approach, assessed with internet data mining. And as you can see, this is the web search analysis of 21 European countries. The higher the peak, the more people are interested in atopic dermatitis. And you can see a clear seasonal variation connected with the climate. So the highest peaks are in Hungary with a continental climate, whereas the flat lines are seen in countries with a maritime climate, such as, for example, in Malta. And again, if we plan to raise awareness of atopic dermatitis in the general population, we of course can use this information to find the best time point for our awareness campaign. We had a look at the connection of atopic dermatitis and influencing environmental factors, in particular in Sweden. And again, what we saw is the higher the temperature, the more sun, the less interest of atopic dermatitis, and the more wind as a trigger factor for atopic dermatitis in Sweden. The more wind, the more people based in Sweden are interested in atopic dermatitis. So I obviously do not want to tell you the story that storks are bringing the babies just because there's a correlation, but I would like to twist it around a little bit and remind you of the story of John Snow, who in 1854 found out that the death of cholera is connected with water pumps. So back then, people did not know what was the cause of cholera, but they found out, okay, it's connected, it's correlated with the water pumps. They closed the water pumps and solved the problem on a local, on a regional level. And again, twisting it around and comparing then the real data and the incidence and prevalence of diseases with the web search data, you can see that in countries where both data are available, that there's a clear connection. So for the rare disease of sarcoidosis in the Swedish provinces, comparing the web search data with the national patient registry, you see that in a province with a high incidence of sarcoidosis, many or much more people Google for information than in areas where with a lower incidence of sarcoidosis. And for countries where we do not have this general information on the incidence and prevalence of diseases, this is a very powerful tool to identify regional levels and unmet needs and risk factors, of course. And the next step of data mining, of internet data mining, and mining as and analyzing the patterns of data on a personal level is the next step of wearables and smart homes. So wearables such as smart lenses or the smart watch assessing data of our heart, how we're breathing, the transepidermal water loss of our skin on every second level can be used together with, for example, data coming from smart cars, from smart refrigerators, or smart bathroom to identify the connection of diseases of atopic dermatitis with environment, with climate on a very personal and individual level. So in summary, internet data mining for me is a very precious tool for spatial epidemiology. It's cheap and it's in real time possible to identify unmet needs on a population-based level at the crossroad, as I said, of diseases, environment, climate, and especially society. And bringing it to atopic dermatitis, we see that there's a high and increasing interest with a clear seasonal peak in different areas of Europe, that we should use it or can use it for disease education and treatment, and especially to raise awareness and to counter misinformation. Thank you for listening, and I'm very happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Alexander. I don't see direct question to you in the chat. Most of them are coming from vet colleagues, and I think will be treated at the end of this session in the round table. I have just one question. So you mentioned the very nice association, I don't say causality, between some seasonal factors and searches on Google. Considering, for example, some peaks in temperature, which are, I would say, quite easy to spot also. Do you see anything concerning our field, either allergy or atopic dermatitis?
Yeah, so in Munich, we see a connection of the birch pollen and atopic dermatitis. A clear correlation of the amount of pollen measured and the interest of general population in atopic dermatitis. And in Sweden, it's a combination for allergy, pollen, and wind. Of course, depending on where the wind comes from, the pollen has a different affecting a different region, and then there's the interest. But as I said, not the individual pollen or wind, but the combination of both.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexander. And I pass the microphone to Pascal for the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you. It was really fascinating, and I would like to do such a job with the dogs, because I'm almost sure that the main topics when dealing with a canine atopic dermatitis, they will ask questions about food. Owners are really obsessed by food with or without gluten, and I'm almost sure there are more questions on that on the internet than on any other topics. Well, but we'll discuss that later. So now it's my pleasure to introduce you Yeni Letimeki. who is an epidemiologist living in Finland, and she's working on biodiversity hypothesis. And she did some fascinating work, I love it, on the link between the environment, urbanization, and human and canine atopic dermatitis. And also she studied couple of owners and dogs and found a link between all these disease environment. It's your go.
Yeah, so please let me know. Yeah, I still try to make this larger. Okay, you should see my screen now, I guess. Yes. So I want to thank organizers for inviting me to this very interesting webinar. So today I'm going to talk about our pets, pet dogs, and also owners, and the skin microbiota, and how these are associated to living environment and allergic outcomes. So I decided to start by saying something about the biodiversity hypothesis, which is kind of, or which has been the focus of my whole career this far. So in the first talk, we heard about hygiene hypothesis. So this biodiversity hypothesis is very related to that, but it takes the hygiene hypothesis a little bit further. So basically, the biodiversity hypothesis states that there are two megatrends which are related, and those are loss of biodiversity and the increasing prevalence of non-communicable diseases. So in this example, you can see asthma and allergic rhinitis, their prevalences among young Finnish males. So in Finland, all the males are going to army when they are 18, and there they go through a very large health examinations already a very long time. So from this data, we can see that there has been large increase in these diseases. On the right-hand side, you can see a few indexes which are describing the loss of biodiversity in our environments. So the biodiversity hypothesis states that these are related because of the microbes. So when we are losing the biodiversity, we are also probably losing the contact with the microbes, which we have evolved with and which are essential for the function and also development of our immune system. So this is basically what I have been looking in my career. So I have provided here a few examples what I have been doing. So I have been looking at biodiversity hypothesis in pet dogs and their owners. And also I have been focused on children, especially early childhood. And the main focus has been microbes in our bodies. So I have been looking skin microbes, airway microbes, gut microbes, and also the microbes which we can find from our indoor environments. But today I'm going to focus on the two studies which you can see at the left-hand side. So basically, we are today talking about pet dogs and their owners. So actually, we were a group of ecologists. So my background is ecology and evolutionary biology. And so we got interested about dog allergies when we were reading from the newspaper that also dogs develop allergies quite a lot nowadays, and it was a surprise for us. But then later I found out that dogs are actually developing quite a many of the diseases which are similar what we have, what we humans have. So we started to wonder that actually the pet dogs are great models to understand the effect of living environments, because they are staying most of their time, they are staying at home, or in the quite close environment surrounding the homes. So they have much simple life than humans. They also live shorter time, and they develop quite fast to adults. So all of this makes quite a nice possibilities for research. However, there are also some not so strong qualities in using the dogs, which mainly are because there is so much less research in dog allergies. We don't know so well how their immunology is working, and also we don't control so well like use of medications and so on in dogs than in humans. So because of this information, we decided to run a study or data collection in southern Finland, where we focus on 2 dog breeds, which you can see here. So the Labrador retrievers, and then those more furry ones are Finnish Laphunds. So we collected from these dogs blood and skin microbiota samples, but we realized that, okay, because their owners are also coming to these events where we are collecting samples, we should also collect the same samples from them. So also from owners, we collected blood and skin microbiota samples. They were also filling very large questionnaires, and later at home, the owners were collecting fecal samples, both from themselves and their dogs. In the first study we did, we focused on the skin microbiota in dogs. So we were looking how environmental factors or factors what we believe are important in defining the microbial exposures that are coming from the environment. So how this relates to skin microbiota, so lifestyle, their environmental, how is their environment, and where they have their exercise. And then we associated this to their health, so whether the dogs were allergic, so that meant if they had allergic symptoms or not. This slide is just to tell you a little bit more about what I mean by the lifestyle, because that is very complex issue. So we try to simplify all of the knowledge we had about the lifestyle to 2 groups. So, and then we name those to urban lifestyle and rural lifestyle. And this urban lifestyle meant that the dog was living usually just with the one person, and the dog was having a lot of hobbies like agility. They were usually living in apartment buildings, so high-rise buildings, and and there were no pets in the household. Well, the opposite was true for the rural lifestyle. So that usually meant that the dog was living in a big family, there were children, and then there were usually other pets like cats and also some cattle sometimes, and they were usually living in detached houses or row houses and so on. So we found out that both the living environment and the lifestyle were influencing on the composition of the skin microbiota. So here you can see that those were a little bit like groups of skin microbiota based on the environment and lifestyle. And then what was very interesting was that also we could find that there was differences in the prevalence of these allergic symptoms between these groups. So the dogs which were living in rural environment and having this rural lifestyle, so big families and so on, they were least likely to have allergic symptoms, while the dogs which were living in urban environments and having this urban lifestyle were most likely to have allergic symptoms. So we were also able then later to look the data, not just dogs, but also their owners. And already in preliminary analysis, we found out that allergic dog was more likely to have allergic than healthy owner, and also opposite way around. So allergic owner was more likely to have allergic than healthy dog. So it seemed that in many cases, they were allergic or healthy together. And maybe at this stage, I could tell you a little bit how we define this allergic. So allergic dog was based, as I mentioned, for the symptoms the dogs were having. So we were using a validated questionnaire which owners filled, and that mostly covers like skin and gut related symptoms, which are related to canine atopic dermatitis. But we don't really have like a real diagnosis of atopic dermatitis in dogs. And also in dogs, it's not, well, in humans, as we heard, in humans also, it's not a disease which is so easy to put into one box. So also in dogs, it can be quite varied, like the symptoms what they have. And then in humans, the allergic meant that they had sensitization. So we were taking the IgE measurements. We were also actually taking those from the dogs. But it seems that in dogs, these are not related to symptoms. In humans, those were very related in this data set. So all sort of allergic symptoms, including the eczema symptoms. But in dogs, they are not. So I think there is quite a lot of discussion or that is what I heard from the vets who were working with us. So I don't have so good specialty in this topic. But yeah, so I understood that in dogs, it's not very good for the diagnosis. So then we started to look these healthy and allergic dog owner pairs. And what we found out was that these healthy pairs were more likely to live in rural environment and also to have this rural environment, rural lifestyle, than the dog owner pairs who were living or who were allergic. So those were usually in urban environment. So we found this very interesting, and especially that these mixed pairs were kind of between these extremes in our data. So finally, we look what this, how the microbiotas in humans and dogs were related. So now we were using both the gut microbiota data and skin microbiota data. And we found out that the human and dog gut microbiotas are not very similar. So they have so different diets, but also they are like they are both mammals, but still their gut is working differently. So it's not maybe so surprising that their gut microbiotas were pretty different, even though they were sharing the homes and maybe sharing diet partly. But the skin microbiota of dogs and humans was actually quite similar. On the picture in the right-hand side, you can see that they were actually sharing quite a large proportion of the skin microbiota between the species. And we could find that the dog and owners, they share more skin microbes than dog with any human. So clearly the close connection increased the sharing of the skin microbes. So therefore we kind of consider that if it is the microbes coming from the environment which are important in the development of these diseases in both species, it's more likely that the effect is coming through the skin than the gut. And there's also other research which is suggesting the same direction. For example, what I have been doing with the young children. So it seems that the airway and skin microbes are more closely related to environment and then probably more likely to mediate the effect of environment in these diseases. yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you today. There has been a lot of people who are involved in this project. If you want to be in touch, there is my email address. So, and I'm happy to hear any questions also. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I don't have any question right here on the screen. At the end of your presentation, if I understand correctly, fecal graft would not be a good option, in fact, in the dog. We should work on the skin microbiota, but not on the fecal one.
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
So I'm sad for the people who are working on that. Yeah.
Yeah, but
and also, I think that in your work, you didn't mention that you did a stratification on the breed predisposed to atopic dermatitis and other breeds. That's correct?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Did you do a stratification, a differentiation between breed predisposed to atopic dermatitis and breed which were not predisposed to atopic dermatitis?
No, well, this was
No.
like a cross-sectional study, so we don't really have that sort of information. From dogs, we know something about that we were looking their early life environment and then where they were living with the owners. So in that way, we will kind of figuring out that also the early life environment was important. But in other ways, this was completely cross-sectional work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Maybe one additional question for the transition to the next speaker, because you make this differentiation between rural and urban lifestyle for dogs and for humans, and also the living really in the countryside or in the cities. So you have a minority of people living in Finland, for example, in rural areas who have like a urban lifestyle styles. It's like it's a bit contradictory, but it is possible even in Finland.
Yeah, it is, but I think it's that we just name those as such. That urban lifestyle, it wasn't related to urban environment. It was meaning that you were living alone in high-rise building without any other pets and without like large family. So that was more related to urban people. And there is quite little, like, for example, high-rise buildings in rural Finland. We are so sparsely populated. So basically, yes, it is absolutely possible to have this, what we call urban lifestyle in rural areas. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce Erika Jensen-Jarolin for the next talk. Erika is a very respected clinical immunologist and allergist. She's in Vienna, Austria. She was a former editor of the WAO journal, and her interest is in several aspects of the hygiene hypothesis or the biodiversity hypothesis. And I think it will be a bit in line with what you said in your talk previously, Jenny. Please, Erika.
Yes, thank you very much for the nice introduction, Alain, and I'm extremely privileged being invited, and I'm excited being here in this global forum. This is really fantastic, and I will talk about today about the farm effect. I have my conflicts of interest declared here, and taken together of what I heard so far in this afternoon, I'm extremely happy that we all are on the same page, and we see allergy and atopic dermatitis as a phenomenon that is related in the One Health hypothesis and affects humans and animals, and that's of high interest. So today I will focus on farm animals, food that is derived from farm animals, and bring this into context with urbanization versus rural environment, as we just heard before. I also would like to bring in the topic of immunonutrition, which we think is extremely important. When you look at an atopic patient, atopic dermatitis or atopic diseases, you see that this patient is pale, is exhausted, and we bring this into context with chronic inflammation that challenges the immune cells. They use a lot of micronutrients up and they get really angry and hungry, so we call that hangry. Therefore, we think that immunonutrition or nutrition in general has a great impact potentially on atopic diseases. In contrast to urban environment, where we see more of these atopic patients and also animals, we have the idealistic farm environment at the countryside. The healthy farm phenotype has red cheeks and a balanced immune system and probably completely different nutrition. So the topics that I want to express today is what is the farm effector actually, and why is this important for atopics and atopic dermatitis, and what is the role of milk there and the milk processing, so coming to industrialization. Well, the farm effect is a well-known phenomenon. It's described in many epidemiologic studies of famous people like Ergo Formoutius and Harald Renz and many others in the field, and there is really lots of information out. But what is important is there is two factors in the farm environment that is very protective and is derived of cows. These is aerosols that are inhaled and also the drinking of raw cow's milk. Well, actually, these studies are not as old as the knowledge is that we have about this farm environment. In fact, it was practically employed already much earlier in the 19th century in recreation areas, in hotels for sick people, lung sickness people, where they built houses. This is an example in Austria, but I know also in Switzerland it is available, that there are these small houses where you have sickness rooms where sick people were living, and right below and aside these rooms, there were the cow sheds, and air from the cow sheds were brought into the sick rooms to bring in healing effects to these sick people. So this is a fact that we know quite some time. And we have also statistics about it. We can associate farm factor with rural environment, where it has a higher protective effect against atopic diseases, atopic asthma, atopic rhinitis, while the urban environment has less or no protective effect. But this is a very drastic change that we experience today with climate change, with increasing urbanization, that diminishes this black and white picture a little bit. So this is an example of fast-growing cities in the German Republic, where you see here in the red areas, fast-growing areas, while in the blue areas, we have even diminished population. And we have, aside this strong growth of cities into the suburbs and into the countryside, we have a changing in the living of these people. These people are also forced to live in an industrialized way. They are dependent on industrialized food, consuming pasteurized milk. And so this farm picture that we have is more or less a romantic picture today. This is why we need models. And one of the models is, sorry, I have to go back. One of the models is, in fact, the model of Amish people or the old order Mennonites people. So these are people who live in a very traditional farming lifestyle. They have their own cattle. They have these romantic farms with lots of aromatic substances in the air, which they inhale, and they neglect industrial technologies. And this has an effect on their allergy prevalence. And what you see here is that the diagnosed allergies is much less in these people who are living in traditional farming conditions as compared to urbanized populations, in this case of the Rochester population. So we need these models to compare still that different living forms have in fact effects on atopic diseases. And these effects are diminished more or less. And this is why the farm living effect on atopic disease is decreasing. There are studies out there that showing that in the 1940s, still farming was more romantic and more aromatic, so to say. And we had a strong effect on the protection against asthma in a grandparents population, whereas in the next parents generation, we have already more asthma, and in the grandchildren, in the kids now, we have 18% asthma, still with people living on a farm. That means that the farms have changed. It's not the same farms that people are living in as 40 or 50 years ago. So among the farm factors, there is the aerosols, but also there is the raw milk effect. And when we point out this effect of raw milk, I want to highlight this study by Brick et al. That analyzed 4 large Central European studies, the Alex, Parsifal, Pasture, and Gabriel study, and analyzed that the raw milk drinking has per se a very strong effect on asthma, current wheeze, hay fever, and atopic sensitization, and within this population also atopic dermatitis. So raw milk is a very strong factor among these farm factors. What is the constituents in raw milk? There is multiple factors that are composed and that are constituted in raw milk. These are soluble cytokines, TGF-beta even, soluble immunoglobulins and other compounds that are derived potentially even from bacteria, but of course less bacteria than in the dust are contained in the raw milk. We were interested in identifying proteins in raw milk, and we identified a protein here. This is beta-lactoglobulin, which is a very common milk protein. It is contained in the V fraction of milk. It belongs to the lipocalin protein family. It is secreted and by urine, and it is aerosolized as dust. So this protein, and this is the news here, is not only contained in milk, especially in raw milk, but also it is aerosolized in dust because it's secreted by the cows via the urine. This protein is very special because it has immunomodulatory function. And what we see here in this study, we could show that this protein, by drinking milk, brings in immunonutrients that is brought to the cells, to the immune cells, and calms these immune cells down. Whereas when the protein is empty, like after pasteurization of milk, it brings in inflammation. It does not bring in protective factors that go along with these micronutrients. So what we describe here is that in allergy, the immune cells are hungry, but raw milk with beta-lactoglobulin bringing in immunonutrients turns them down and calms them down. So milk processing obviously has an effect on wheat proteins, and that goes along with industrialization. So dairy farming has changed substantially within the last 100 years or so. We have a tremendous upscale. So when you look at the numbers of milk production per cow, we have almost a double amount of milk that is secreted by cows between 1975 and 2000, and there is even amounts of 35 liters per cow per day that is secreted. And that means that cows have changed, cow farming has changed tremendously, and also the transport of milk and distribution to the population has changed dramatically. And dairy industry is among the largest industry, and it is a very important industry with high technology around, because milk is one of the staple foods, is very important around the world for nutrients, bringing nutrients, high quality nutrients to the population from babies to the elderly. And there is thousands of milk processing procedures. And if you look into these procedures, it's very, very complex. It combines filtration with pasteurization, of course, because we want to get rid of the bacteria to make it transportable and bring it to the population. The cream is taken away. We and caseins are separated by acidification and so on and so further. So this is very complex. And we have concluded that in this review, which is part of the Drachma series, which is guided by Alessandro Fiocchi and is published in the WOW journal, actually, where we conclude that the raw milk that is produced from the cows changes tremendously. So first, the whey proteins are separated. They are undergoing ultrafiltration. They are brought together with shear forces. They are treated by acidic treatments. They are brought together. They bring up new disulfide bridges between molecules, aggregating them. They are pasteurized, losing their three-dimensional structure, losing all the good micronutrients, which we later have to bring in artificially into the milk again. And in the end, homogenization, not to talk about baby food, which is again more processed. So processing increases milk allergenicity, to make this long story short. And interestingly, these studies are not as old as dairy technology is old. And we have to face that processing affects milk allergenicity. The question is just how we can turn the clock back to make milk again anti-allergenic and make milk protective against, as we see it in raw milk. And of course, this is not a recommendation to drink raw milk, because it can contain harmful bacteria, which then are lost by pasteurization. But we should think about procedures to bring in again the protective effects of raw milk. In contrast, when we go to the supermarket, we have numerous different types of milks, which are highly processed and which are having little to do with the raw milk that has such a tremendous beneficial effect against atopic diseases, including atopic dermatitis. So the conclusions that I want to bring to you in this very short talk is natural factors, farm factors like BLG are important for atopics. BLG is a compound that connects, that is the missing link between raw milk and aerosolized dust in stables that are both very protective for people who live at traditional farms. Traditional farms are more and more rare. They are put into niches due to the large growing population, due to the urbanization, which then gives a need for highly processed food. Industrialized milk processing affects milk quality and enhances the allergenic risk of milk. And this is what prompts our research towards novel concepts for imitating what is good in raw milk. And we have some ideas about that. That brings me a little bit into the conflict of interest, because we developed a lozenge about it. But also there are efforts about minimally processed milk to still guarantee milk safety to bring to the population while inhibiting allergenicity. So thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you very much, Erika, for this fascinating talk. And I have just one question. Since you think that it would be nice to replace the raw milk by some of the constituents like beta-lactoglobulin, and you say that the effect in the farm comes from drinking milk and from aerosol of milk, which you propose yourself to drink a capsule or but what about aerosol, to making something like aerosol? Would it be better in terms of prevention?
I think that people would prefer to take a lozenge or drink something than to inhale aerosols. This is much more complex also during the development. And in the first farm studies, the farm effect in general was analyzed, but then these big study groups tried to sort it out and to analyze what is now the aerosols and what is the effect of the raw milk. And the raw milk is very powerful. So I think that we can fully concentrate on this nutritional concept because it's more feasible on a practical way for the patients.
Thank you very much. I think it's time to go to the next speaker, and I'll leave the microphone to Pascal.
Yeah, thank you. So it's Matt. So we'll go out of the farm now. We're going to speak about the planet, so it will be larger. So it's my pleasure to introduce you, Claudia Treider-Lofman. I hope I pronounce it not too bad. She's a human dermatologist, like we say here in vet dermatology. And she's an expert on the influence of environmental factors on human health. And she's holding the chair of environmental medicine at the University of Augsburg. She's the director of the Institute of Environmental Medicine in Helmholtz Zentrum München. And she will speak about the planetary health and case of atopic dermatitis. Please.
Pascal, thank you very much for introducing myself. Thank you very much for this. And welcome everyone to my talk about planetary health and the case of AD. Since in the beginning we started with AD and the concept of planetary health, I switched a little bit gears during listening to you, and I will now try to open already up the discussion we will have and to bring this broader aspect of planetary health and human health here to the discussion. So let me start showing you my presentation. I hope that you see the presentation in the right mode. Please let me know when you see the presenter mode. So it's about planetary health. And I think when we speak about planetary health, we have really to understand what this means. This means that human health is really depending on the health of the planet. And speaking about this, we have to understand that climate change impacts on human health really from head to toe. And it's not only the skin that is affected by climate change, but our brain, cardiovascular system, the infection, and the skin and respiratory tract, and also the gastrointestinal tract. So we have to admit that climate change is impacting on the whole system Earth, but at the same time impacting on the whole system human being. During my talk, I have some QR codes. If you scan those codes, you will, for example, here come on all the publications we wrote about climate change and health in PubMed. But we also have to admit that all this is depending on tipping points. So also in the human immune system, we have to admit that at a certain stage, there's a tipping point that brings us from sensitization to allergic disease. And the same tipping points are also in the human system. So we have sleeping giants, tipping points. And when we reach these tipping points, Earth systems will come out of balance. And this is something we have to understand. And why I'm telling you this here on a symposium on atopic dermatitis, because the conclusion I wanted to give you listening to me is that we as medical doctors, as people working in the health sector, we have to transport this message that climate change is impacting on health and being the tipping point for the social transformation that leads to the fact that we try to abate or at least to bring down, mitigate climate change. So indeed, to bring you a last really very sad story is that, and this is again a publication here I would like to state, that the future means when we are going on like this, we are losing the climate niche for humanity. And you see here, all in red means that here are areas where people are losing the climate niche. And cited in this publication is that in the next 50 years, 3 billion of people will lose their homes. I'm telling you this, and I was writing here this review together with my colleagues here in the German Advisory Council on Global Change to the German federal government. And what we identified here, we need really to bring this concept of prevention to the stage. On the individual level, we have to have a healthier lifestyle. On the national level, we have to have healthy living condition, and also on the global level, a healthy planet. And this will lead us really to a healthy living on a healthy planet. So again, let me state also the World Economic Forum. And I think when something is coming to the World Economic Forum, this at least should bring us to the idea that this is really important. And guess what? On this World Economic Forum, the subject, what we have also here in this symposium, was that climate change is impacting on human health. And interesting enough here, the authors showed that all these extreme weather events are impacting here also on the skin, actually, which means in general, and this is what we heard in the first talk, climate change, extreme weather events, heat and pollen have an impact on the skin. Means that this is important for atopic dermatitis, but beyond this, for human health. And actually, when I was speaking with politicians, they told me, please come up with something else than that people, because this is not convincing people anymore. So we are coming up with money. And you can see here what they showed is by 2050, we have 12.5 trillion economic losses due to climate change in the health sector. And I think this should convince people. So having said this, I would like to come back to the skin and to speak a little bit with you about climate change and what is the scientific evidence how climate change and decrease in planetary health can impact on the skin. So one important thing when we speak about atopic dermatitis and environment is the skin barrier. And to bring this again to your mind, please be aware that the skin barrier is really orchestrated by a variety of musicians, let's say. It's a microbiome, it's a chemical barrier, it's a physical barrier, and the immune barrier. What is lacking here is the neurological barrier. And this barrier is impacted by environmental factors. And one important environmental factor is pollution. Pollution which has at least two bad side effects, let's say. It's impacting on our health, but it's also incrementing climate change. So by reducing pollution, we can also address this issue, because we know that traffic pollution is a risk factor for our health. You see that the nearer a child is living to a high traffic road, the higher probability is for the children to develop atopic dermatitis. And this is something we know also on the molecular level. We know that the skin microbiome, for example, is influenced by pollutants. But not only this, we know also that the mucosal barrier is impacted by pollution. And again, this is here summarized in this nice publication. And again, here you can see that it's not only an association, it's really a causal and molecular understood association, how, for example, PM10 is here impacting on the inflammasome, and then, for example, leading to increased mucus production. But this is also known for black carbon. So we know really on the molecular level how these pollutants are impacting on our mucosa, on our skin, on our surfaces. But on the other hand, we have also the effect of pollutant on pollen, for example. And this here part of our work was here summarized by colleagues here in this nice publication. Again, you can scan here and then you can see this publication. So we know that outdoor pollution is impacting on the pollen, making the pollen more aggressive. We have also, due to climate change, more pollen, for example. And then the other effect, which is extreme weather events, for example, the thunderstorm asthma, which is also effect of climate change on human health. So means we have the effect of pollution, and we have also the effect of climate change, not only on us as people, but also on nature. In this connection, I was speaking about pollen. Let me summarize this effect of climate change and pollen for you again. You have to remember 4 things. So first of all, we have longer pollen season due to climate change. We have more pollen per day. We have more aggressive pollen, means they are producing more of the allergen. And we have also new pollen, which is here, for example, ambrosia. So these effects of climate change on the ecosystem is impacting on us and on our health. Perhaps another good example, and also a good example on how we are doing our research, is this one. So what we have here at Helmholtz Center Munich is, I call it a time machine, because we can expose plants to future climate conditions. And what we did here, we exposed ambrosia to low or high CO2 levels. And what we did then, we took those pollen and put them in a complex system, means in a mouse system. And what we were able to show, that these pollen that were exposed to high concentrations of CO2, and this was a scenario that we can expect when climate change is going on like this. These high CO2 pollen, they were higher in the induction of loss of tolerance and higher IgE. And also these high CO2 pollen, they had an increased lung inflammation here in the mouse system. You see it here, the red bars. You can see that there's a higher inflammation here in the lungs of the mice that were exposed to these pollen, that were exposed to high CO2. Means, so we have more pollen, we have more aggressive pollen. And to bring this even to a larger context, I can tell you that pollen are for sure important for patients with atopic dermatitis as trigger. They're important for people with asthma and rhinitis. But, and this is really something we brought up in the last 4 to 5 years, that pollen are really more than allergen carriers. Because we were able to show, and this is work done together with Stephanie Gillis here as head of the studies, what we were showing is that pollen are blocking antiviral genes in the nose of allergics and non-allergics. And indeed, we were also able to show the molecular mechanisms. I show you here the graphical abstract to make a long story a little bit shorter. But you can remember, please, that we have a block of type 1 and type 3 interferons on the mucosa of patients, or of not only of patients, of healthy individuals. Means that we have really a block of antiviral cytokines. And this in mind, we observed this pandemic in February, April 2020. And this is when we came up with a study, including almost all continents, but especially here in Europe. And we were able to show that the exponential increase of SARS-CoV-2 infections was correlated with pollen counts. And this was a real correlation because, as I said, we could also show already here the molecular background of this. And we were able to show that high pollen counts were connected with high SARS-CoV-2 infection rate. On the other hand, so in countries where low pollen there were also lower infection rates. So this study shows you that speaking about planetary health means we have really to connect everything with everything and to see that everything is also with everything connected. So really, we know climate change is impacting on human health and disease. And I started with this, and I would like to summarize this again for you, because I'm convinced that having this in mind, we can really be change agents, the change agents out of the health sector. You have to convince people that we have to act on this to save the climate niche for us on this earth. And again, here, the transformative potential of the health sector, which are us and you that you're listening, we have also to see that we are a central interface, because we, as health sector, we produce more than 5% of all CO2 emissions or productions worldwide. So we ourselves, we have to work on our sustainability. We have to convince people that we have to protect biodiversity. Climate protection is at the end health protection. And with this message and with this strong picture of a healthy child, I would like to close with this statement. We have to save our environment for sustainable health. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Claudia. I'm a little bit depressed after that, but motivated too. Just one question. I'm still a vet taking care of dogs, so this is not ecologically, well, appropriate, but well. Just one question about the pollen. The dogs are living close to the floor, and they have a lot of pollen in hair. And do you think that without allergy to pollens, it can provoke or induce lesions of atopic dermatitis on the feet, on the face by itself?
When the pollen is getting, the dog is getting into contact with the human being, and the dog is...
No, when there is pollen on the dogs, because on the dog you can find a lot of pollens.
Yeah, but
during the season.
Since the dog has a lot of hair, because and then the direct contact of the pollen with the skin of the dog is less. For example, when we compare this with us, because we have almost no hair here, but this is why we have atopic dermatitis also here on the skin and not on the scalp foremost. I think pollen will not be a major trigger factor for atopic dermatitis in dog.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Claudia. This a very nice overview, going to One Health, to planetary health, and introducing the next discussion. Our last speaker will speak about therapy. She's Antonia Gabriel, and she's a group leader in dermatology department of the University of Zurich. And she has been working together with Martin Bachmann on the vaccination of horses. And I think this is tremendous, tremendous new information for us in the field of dermatology, and maybe veterinary medicine applied to dermatology. Please, Antonia.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Can you see my screen?
Perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot also to the organizers for inviting me to this very interesting symposium. I've enjoyed the talks a lot. My topic is vaccination strategies in immunologic diseases in veterinary medicine, focusing on horses today. I cannot move my slides. So this is my conflict of interest statement. So I would like to start with that we have more than 100 monoclonal antibodies which are registered to be used for human patients. However, when we look into the veterinary options, there is very limited available. So we have 2 monoclones registered for the use in dogs and 1 monoclone registered for the use in cats. However, there's a lot going on in this field, but this is mostly restricted to cats and dogs. The reason probably being because cats and dogs is the biggest market in the veterinary field. However, also maybe other reasons is that bigger species are maybe excluded because of the body weight. We usually apply the monoclonal antibodies based on body weight. And when we do now the calculation for a 3 to 10 kilogram dog, an annual treatment with 12 injections costs the owner 960 francs plus the cost of the veterinarian. When we take this now to the horse, which is in average 500 kilos, we end up with 160,000 francs per annum plus the cost of the veterinarians. So the targeted therapy is not really available for all animals or all individuals in the world. So we would like to take this with a different approach that is affordable and an appropriate alternative for other patients. So the system that we chose to do so is a vaccine that induces self-made autoantibodies. And to do so, we need a really strong immune activator that overcomes B-cell tolerance. And this is a virus-like particle that has all the properties to really effectively activate the immune system. And also, on the other hand, it's very cost-effective because it can be produced in a prokaryotic expression system, and the cost of goods are then much more attractive than for the monoclonals, which are produced in mammalian cells. Also, vaccines are not applied based on body weight, but rather on a threshold activation, so the dose is rather independent of the body weight. And today I would like to show you our data on our lead candidate targeting eosinophilia. So the target is interleukin-5, and we want to treat allergies in horses. So how is the vaccine made? So first, the co-protein of the VLP is produced. There's a self-assembly step. Then a second step, production of the self-molecule. In our case, it's the IL-5. Then both is coupled together, and we have this spiked football looking like thing. And this is a captain carrier complex. This is goes back to a very old phenomenon, was found by Landsteiner, that an immunogenic carrier, which is the VLP, can drive immunogenicity against the non-immunogenic hapten. And so together applied to the horse will generate antibodies against the VLP, but also against our IL-5. So the 2 diseases I will talk today is insect bite hypersensitivity in horses and urticaria. So insect bite hypersensitivity is also known as summer eczema in horses, and it's the most common allergic disease in horses. It's seasonally reoccurring every year. It's an allergy towards insect bites. It's highly debilitating for the owner and for the horse, as you can appreciate from the picture. It's a type 1 allergy with type 4 characteristics. Then urticaria is very much like the human urticaria. It can be seasonal or year-round, and there are various triggers known. It can be allergens, but it can be also heat, cold, or pressure. And often it is very difficult to find out what is the cause of the urticaria in those horses. And the reoccurrence rate is unpredictable. It's classified as a type 1 allergy. So when we target interleukin-5, which is the master regulator of the eosinophils, we stop the differentiation, activation, and chemotaxis of eosinophils, and we aim to reduce the level of eosinophils in the blood and ultimately also in the skin. The beauty about this system is that it's allergen independent, because also in dogs, also in horses, it's very difficult to find out what exactly the animals are allergic to, even though in insect bite hypersensitivity, it's midges, but there are different populations of different midges, and it was found out that the horses all react to a different set of allergens within these midges, so it's really a complicated system. The diagnostics with this system treating the eosinophilia is limited, so we only need to know if there is eosinophilia or not, and it can be also then broadly used in allergic diseases in horses. So we first, of course, have to know that eosinophils play a key role. So we and also others did that, looked into skin, and we found eosinophilia in skin samples of IBH horses. Then when we also look into the blood, we can see that the lesions and the eosinophils follow a similar pattern throughout the season, and the the lesion severity and the number of eosinophils is positively correlated, and the more severe the horses are affected, the more eosinophils they present. So we treated horses with the vaccine. We call it Dermavax. It's the Al5-VLP. And we first do this always we have a pre-season where we observe the horses only without any treatment to see how severe they are, because it's a very heterogeneous disease. It can be presenting like a very bloody horse all over, or it can be just some minor scales and broken hair. So we really have to know how severe are the horses. Then we have a placebo-controlled double-blind part. This is the first treatment year. So the horse receives, the active group receives vaccine and the other group receives placebo. You can see the placebo is basically unchanged to the pre-season, and the active horse group has a significant reduction in the lesion score. Then there is a second year treatment, which is a half crossover. So all the horses get treated. The ones that previously had vaccine got a single booster, and the other ones got a basic vaccination. And the ones that were freshly vaccinated significantly also improved their lesions. And for the other ones, we can see that also the second treatment year, there was a further improvement comparing to the first year. So when looking into the eosinophils, our biomarker, we also measured antibodies, but the eosinophils are really nice and easy to measure biomarker. So when we vaccinate previously primed horses with placebo or with vaccine, we really see a significant drop of eosinophils upon vaccination. Also, when we look into a whole season of IBH, we can see that when comparing to a placebo year, that the horses have significantly reduced numbers of eosinophils throughout the season. And then what is really striking, the eosinophil numbers in both seasons are similar. However, we have a further increase in the protection. So the lesion score further improves, and we were wondering why. So we were looking into other known players of allergy. So we looked into basophils, and we indeed see that in the second year, basophils also were significantly decreased in the horses. And this is really interesting because this was just recently also found in humans who were treated with benralizumab, the Al5 receptor antibody. And then we also looked at allergen-specific IgE, and we found that vaccinated horses had a significant reduction of allergen-specific IgE. And this is also, again, something that was found in human patients treated with benralizumab. Then we looked into eosinophil subtypes. We have been previously found two subtypes in horses. So the inflammatory eosinophils, which are associated with IBH, and the regulatory eosinophils, which are associated with healthy horses, and the IBH horses particularly lose this regulatory eosinophil subtype. And when we vaccinate the horses, the total number of eosinophils goes down, and in the vaccinated seasons, when we compare the first and the second year, the size of the eosinophils goes down in the second year, and also the granularity goes down. And these are hallmarks of the regulatory eosinophilic subtype. And then when we look into expression markers on the cell surface, which are associated with migratory profiles of eosinophils, we can see that the regulatory eosinophil subtype is upregulated in the second treatment year horses. So in general, this suggests that the reappearance of the regulatory eosinophils, which are seen in the healthy horses, is coming up in the second year. So with this, the targeting the eosinophils has quite a broad effect on the allergy. So it affects eosinophils, it affects basophils, the allergen-specific IgE. And with this, we cover the three components, most important components in allergy. And interestingly, this is also seen in humans with the benralizumab. Then by coincidence, we actually saw that horses that were in the IBH trial that also had recurrent urticaria in the summer season. And these horses did show urticaria in the pre-season where we just observed, and also in the placebo year. But when the horses were vaccinated, they did not show any signs of urticaria. And this was over 4 years when they were re-vaccinated. And we were wondering why this is the case. And then we took punch biopsies from insect bite hypersensitivity lesions and from urticaria lesions, and we saw a common ground for this. And the main genes that popped up on which are related with eosinophil development, activation, and recruitment were IL-5, CXCL10, CCR5, and eotaxin-3. So also in non-intermittent urticaria, which is not related to IBH at all, we saw that the horses were benefiting from the vaccine. And this led us to initiate a double-blind placebo-controlled trial in urticaria in horses. The study is still ongoing. However, we had recently a very positive interim analysis of the two different groups and the follow-up. So what is really important, obviously, when we vaccinate against a self-protein, is the safety. So in general, we did not have any safety signals in any of the clinical studies we had so far. This includes a 5-year follow-up with yearly revaccinations. Regarding B-cell safety, it's really important that this immune response is reversible. And I show here some antibody titers, so you can see at season end these drops, and then only upon boosting the auto IgG increase again. And what is also very important is, of course, that the endogenous protein in the body is not inducing any immune response. And this we did with this mouse experiment using the murine version of the vaccine, and we challenged the mice with IL-5. And you don't see any increase in titers. However, when you come with the VLP coupled to the murine IL-5, you see an increase in titers. So you really need the vaccine to boost the titer. And this also brings me then to the T-cell safety. This phenomenon is only possible because we have VLP-specific T-cells or carrier-specific T-cells that offer bystander help to the B cells to also make a class switch from IgM to IgG. And we also did studies in horses with up to 5 years vaccination, and did in vitro restimulation with the self-protein and look for T-cell responses, and there were none against the self-protein. So this is really a very important thing regarding safety. And with this, I would like to inspire that maybe we could use more costly medications, which is not always a monoclonal, but maybe in these situations where the patient will suffer lifelong and chronically from a disease, we may think about more cost-effective options, which will also reach people or animals which are not so privileged. And so I would like to thank, of course, the team that did the work, also former team members that conducted the work, and also the funding, and you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Antonia, for this very novel and provocative approach. I think your talk raised several questions, and I have one first, maybe is, did you treat young animals because of the development of the immune system and the risk of vaccinating against a major cytokine?
We only vaccinated diseased animals. We did never vaccinate not diseased animals. There were sometimes younger animals, but we never had a full. I mean, they were 2 years and older. I think this is the inclusion criteria of this study, but the actual oldest horse, youngest horse, was probably like 5 or 6 years.
You have 3 questions. I don't know if it's from Brazil or Portugal, from Dr. João Paulo Amaral Leitao. Can this VLP vaccine carry more than one allergen or antigen? Does VLP vaccine impact IgE test results? Can schedule of VLP vaccine be shorter than 1 year? 3 questions. So more than one allergen, impact in IgE results, and be shorter than 1 year.
Yeah, more than one antigen is possible, and it's also possible to vaccinate at the same time. But like for the production, to keep it clean and have like proper analytics tested at the end, I would rather recommend to have different sets so you could could have the VLP platform, to say, and have different antigens, and then you couple separately, and then afterwards you mix together and inject into the animal. But that's possible. Impact on the IgE test results? Yes, in a way, because we have seen that we decreased the allergen-specific IgE, and we never looked at in like allergens that were not related really to the disease. So we don't know anything on that. This is not known. But the allergen-specific one in these horses decreased.
And the protocol shorter than 1 year?
Yeah, so in principle, you have a basic vaccination regimen consisting of 2 prime boost and then another booster, like 3 injections, and then you can boost whenever you like. I mean, if you have a disease which is maybe not half a year, maybe shorter, you do 1 booster. If you have a whole year-round disease, you do maybe 2 shots and maybe decrease later the number of injections. But it obviously, since it's a vaccination, we need 2 injections until we have antibodies. It takes approximately 6 weeks. So we inject 4 weeks apart, and then 2 weeks later, approximately, we have the antibody response.
Thank you very much, Antonia. So I think we can take a 1 or 2 minute break before starting the discussion, the general discussion, just to recapitulate the questions and to discuss maybe between the moderators before we start. So I'll leave you 2 minutes before we start again. But please, Pascal, Johannes, I think Peter has moved, and for sanitary reasons, sorry. And Jose is back. I don't know if Jose can participate. Jose, are you online?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Good to hear you. So we are supposed
I'm available.
to start the discussion within 1 or 2 minutes. So I was not aware that Jose because he was supposed to be not on vacation, but outside for WHO missions and not available. So, but I'm very happy he can help with Johannes and Pascal to moderate the next session.
My pleasure.
Very good.
So we can go to the questions on the. I think they have been put both on the chat side by Laurent. I think.
Yes, Philippe, you find the questions in the chat and the Q&A tab in the bottom of the screen.
Yes, and also I think it's maybe easier to go to the, if you are on Zoom, to go to the first questions.
How should we do this? Should we work on the questions, or should we follow the speakers, or ask 1 question to each speaker or something?
Yeah, I think everything is good.
Because there were questions already,
yes.
and we have 10 minutes only. Is this correct?
No, we can, because we said we started at sharp 3 p.m. and we have the slot until 5:30, so it's okay.
Okay, so we don't have to hurry so much.
We don't have to hurry.
So we can.
So the first question were from also this colleague from Portugal on the incidence of atopic dermatitis in households with pets versus without pets, and the allergy to feline saliva as atopic dermatitis. I think it's not really for us. It's for the colleagues in vet dermatology. And another question: the exposure to Toxocara canis in early life, and the hygiene hypothesis, and the mental health aspect on anxiety in dogs. So I think I leave you, but I think it's...
Is Peter around or not?
Sorry?
Peter is not around, or...
Yes, Johannes, everybody is there.
Yes, so good. I think we can start.
So
So Johannes, Pascal, and
Okay.
Jose are going to lead the discussion.
I have one question. So about exposition to toxocarcanis, which is quite common for all the dogs, which influence immune system and which provoke sensitization to house mites and especially to dermatophagoides. So in the dog, it seemed that this infestation could help the development of atopic dermatitis, and this is quite the opposite of hygiene hypothesis. So what do you think about that?
To whom is this addressed?
Or maybe that's a good question. Who could
He is confident to answer.
that's a good that's a good question too. I would say to Diana that, well, since it is autogeny, because it's hygiene hypothesis.
Yeah, okay, maybe I can start, even though I have to remind that I'm ecologist and evolutionary biologist, so I don't really have so much expertise in these kind of issues. But we were already in the first presentation talking about these kind of contradictory findings and so on. So I think what is important, first of all, is to make the difference between prevention and treatment. So it seems to be different story when we look at which are the exposures you should have early in life. And then if you happen to develop allergies or asthma, any kind of overreactivity, then it's different story. So it's probably early in life, it's good to be exposed to several kind of things, because then your immune system gets kind of programmed and learns to make the difference between friends and foe. But then later, if you already have the overreactivity, it might be better that you avoid the allergens. So I think this is basically what I can say for the topic.
Yeah, thank you.
I would have a question to you with regard to the similarity or harmony between the owners and the dogs. This is a very striking feature. And what role does this sympathy play in this, or the common behavior? You know, the dogs and the owners, they walk similarly. We know this.
Yeah. So actually, we were wondering the same. And the way we were thinking about this issue was that we had dog owners who were suffering from the skin diseases or gut-related to diseases, which were similar what dogs develop when they have some kind of allergies. So we decided to exclude those from the analysis, and we see if we still get the same results, and we did. So it seems that it's not only that the owners are kind of because it was based on the owner definition of the dog symptoms.
Okay.
So that it wasn't just that the owners were finding the symptoms they had from their dogs. So yeah, I think it's not explaining that.
Peter.
Concerning the exposure, sorry that I interrupt, but concerning the exposure, when exposure to allergen is good, concerning the development of allergies, I think it's not only the timing, it's also the route of exposure. So whether we are exposed over the skin or orally. So I think it's clear that when we expose children very early in life, for example, to allergens like peanut, yeah, then they apparently develop a tolerance. So this is a window of opportunity. However, when children are exposed by peanut butter, for example, when they have an eczema in the skin, they're exposed via the skin with the allergen early in life, and then they develop a sensitization. So it's not only timing. It's also where are we exposed. And there's also data around showing that when children are exposed to pollen early in life, they they have a higher probability to develop asthma and sensitization before. So again, it's not only timing, it's also where we are exposed to. And I think there is also a lot of research to do concerning this.
But just to follow on this aspect, and maybe this general question we asked today, is One Health something which is relevant in the field of complex disease such as atopic dermatitis? So the gap between infectious disease and allergy is something interesting with this story of Toxocara canis. So maybe some pathogens may induce some bad sensing of the immune system, but others could do the other way. And so, because if we summarize this symposium, it was rather the dark side. I'm surprised that nobody has brought some good side of even climate change or anything in this broad range of topics.
Well, to the lecture, the presentation of Dr. Abela, who came from the infectious diseases mostly. And this, I think, is very, very important and very striking, but there may be an antagonistic effect. Part of the hygiene hypothesis says that we have less tuberculosis and we pay for it by more allergy, you know. So there's a recent paper, very dramatic. They studied the pest epidemic in Europe in 1346 and took probes from skeletons in London pest cemeteries and then compared to later cemeteries, 20 or 30 years later, people who had survived the epidemic. And they found differences in gene expression exactly for some immune-related genes, which nowadays give rise or are in favor of Crohn's disease or autoimmune disease or maybe allergies. Make a long story short, the survival of the pest was was leading to expression of genes leading to allergy finally, 200 years later or so. A fantastic paper recently in Nature or something.
Erika, you have a question?
Erika.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion goes so fast, so I had several questions already. Moving on to Claudia, I think the example of the peanut is very important, and peanut is such a good example because it raises up the topic of processing, because we know that the major allergen RH1 is by roasting, getting a trimer and then getting really allergenic because it poses a danger signal to the immune system. And there was one question in the chat whether processing also plays a role in canine, in pet food, which is dried grains and so on. So I don't know about these studies, but I think this is definitely something that has changed over the past, I don't know, 50 years. The pet feed is one of the biggest markets around the world. It's highly processed, it is pre-packed, it comes to the urban environments, into the apartments. It's very practical, convenient food for the animals. And I think kind of a parallel development of allergies in the animals and the usage of dried food. I don't know what your opinion is, but this I want to pose into discussion.
Sorry.
Please.
Those studies, there are very few studies on that because pet food lobbying is really good. There was a Swedish or maybe Swedish study which showed that feeding the queen with raw food helped not develop atopic dermatitis for the dogs later. So there's one point, but it was not a very, very good study. We need more studies on that, really. But we can also prevent the development of atopic dermatitis in predisposed dogs using such type of foods. So there's no answer on that yet. And I will add, as far as I'm speaking, about the Toxocara canis. In fact, with Toxocara canis, there is common antigen, which are like a CCD, in fact, between Dermatophagoris farinae and Toxocara canis. And there is a lot of non-specific sensitization to DF in the dog, but it's only for DF. It's not for the other mites, and there's no clinical signs associated to this sensitization alone to DF.
What I like so much, Erika, in your lecture, that you have a practical conclusion at the end that one can do at least something. And at the same time, you will show the difficulties. It's no longer possible to do those early farmer studies like Dr. Gassner started in 1978. And now everything turns to so-called Western civilization. There is no, maybe some Indian in Brazil, native people, but it's very difficult to do those studies. But you show clearly that there is this effect. What I would like to ask you, you say immunonutrients, but what is it? There's a lot of, should we take those capsules with 50 elements and healthy vitamins, or what are the important nutrients?
I mean, this is a very interesting question, Johannes. There are epidemiologic studies showing that vitamin A deficiency, folic acid deficiency goes directly into atopic dermatitis. But how to bring this efficiently into the body is very difficult, because in atopic patients, we have what we call the hepcidin block. That means that iron absorption, like the absorption of other micronutrients, is blocked in the intestine. So basically, if you take a food supplement, 90% goes through. This is very well known. So what we need is targeted nutrition to bring substances to the immune cells, and that makes a difference between the supplements and dietary, specific targeted dietary approaches. So supplements is like you stand under the shower and most of the water passes by you, right?
The role of iron, you stressed in one of your papers, the role of iron. Ferrum. Has this a special importance for prevention of atopic dermatitis, or?
So for atopic dermatitis, we are still doing the studies in NC-NGA mice, and we see differences, but generally iron is important to calm down the immune cells. So like regulatory T cells have more iron inside, but when they are running out of iron, they are getting what I said, hangry, and they cannot do their immunomodulatory function. They're getting more allergic. So I think this is very interesting. The dietary approaches in allergy and nutrition has a very strong power there. And I have a question now for Jenny, if I may. And this is the study of comparing the couples, the animal holder and the animal on farms and in the cities. So did you actually also check for what they feed to their pet animals? Do they use dry food for the animals, or are they using more natural, fresh cooked food also for the animals in this environment?
Yes, actually, we have published one study which is focusing more on this side in the same cohort. So we knew what the dogs are eating, but not what the humans are eating. So, and actually it was quite contradictory, because we found that the dogs who had more allergies were eating more these raw food diets. But what we concluded then was that, okay, this was cross-sectional study. And what is commonly suggested by the vets is that when your dogs get these symptoms, you should try to change the diet. So maybe this was the reason for the relation, probably. So that is what we found.
Very interesting.
I see two questions which were not addressed in the chat. One commenting about urban versus rural studies in Asia, if you know of similar studies. I think this is for Jenny. And the other is about the discussion that was going on hair being protective, contrary to clinical experience. The longer the hair, the more HDM antigen. When we clip hair, symptoms sometimes improve. This is from Paul Bloom. But I think maybe for Pascal or for other comments in the field of derm vets.
Yeah, if I can shortly comment about the rural and urban differences in Asia. So I think there is, so I don't know the topic completely and by no far, but what I think that there is kind of many Chinese studies nowadays looking this, and there is indeed differences in the prevalence of asthma, at least in rural and urban China.
And maybe Pascal, about
I can comment on the
clipping or not the hairs.
Clipping or not clipping. As a dermatologist, I love to clip. If when you're a vet dermatologist, you cannot see the skin, in fact. So I'm for clipping all the time. And if we are dealing with atopic dermatitis, when you clip, you limit maceration, you have less infection, and you improve the dog most of the time. So I'm not sure it's due to less aerogen in contact to the skin when you clip. But it's just an opinion. We don't have any proof of anything.
Isn't it that you clip away the hair which have absorbed some allergen?
This was the question.
Exactly. Okay.
Yes, this was the question. Yes.
I have a question I have an addition to the China example, and that in China, in the rural environment, people are living more together with chicken, actually, in their homes and houses. And there are studies showing that chicken may have similar farm protective factors as in the European area, the cow, and also pigs, actually. So that has to be newly explored. In that case, it would be the clipping of feathers.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. You know, having a chicken at home in Paris is really on fashion, so we have less sick people. That's really good. I have a question for Antonia. You know, cats are small horses because they are just full of eosinophils. Do you have project on using such vaccine in the cat?
There is a project ongoing, but not from us. We only do horses, but someone is working on it. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Nice feature.
I would like to go to the planetary aspect of this One Health symposium, and I think Claudia Dreidel was the one who really covered this. And I have a nasty question. Who defines the health of the planet? Is it now healthy, or was it healthy 12,000 years ago in the Ice Age? What is really, how do we define? We say 1970 was before, and all the studies show increase or changes from pre-industrial, or you have thought a lot about. Tell us, what is the definition of health of the planet?
Perhaps I can also start concerning this. I think what we as human beings define as a healthy planet is a healthy planet that is healthy for us. But you are absolutely right. So we do not have to save the climate. We have to save this planet for us.
Exactly.
And this is a concept. So nothing happens when climate change is going on, and we have an Earth that is 4, 5, 6 degree heater oh, it's okay for the planet. It changed all the time, but the planet will lose humanity.
Okay.
Yeah. So you are absolutely right. A healthy planet for us, from the anthropogenic centric view, it's a planet that is healthy for us.
And continuing on this, we talk mostly on animals and humans. So I think it's wonderful that we also talk on animals today. Normally we only talk on humans. What about the plants? They are also in danger. And do you observe diseases in plants also increasingly in these decades? Yeah, are you still here?
Yeah. So what we looked for viruses in pollen, for example, and in plants.
Okay.
We saw an increase of a virus in plants, in pollen. This is something we looked for, and yeah, for sure we have trees are dying. The good notion for the birch trees is that in 50 years perhaps we do not have any birch trees anymore in Germany because they are very drought sensitive. But there will be other plants that are coming, such as ambrosia. So yeah, you're right. The plants, they are also suffering for sure.
And among your practical, you also came up with practical consequences or recommendations. What, when you prioritize, what would you say is the most important? So, easy question, but difficult answer.
At a stage where we have to bring everything at priority one, because also the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, clearly shows that already now the impact of climate change on health, on all ecosystem is so enormous that we have really to set our actions on priority one, and this is to reduce emissions. And this is, I think this has to be priority one. But Erika, you also wanted to raise some.
Yes, thank you. Something very interesting. I answered to partly Johannes and aspects to your talk. Talking about plant diseases, of course, we are in middle of the discussion of pathogenesis-related proteins, which are allergens. So when the plants are sick from osmotic stress, dryness, and whatsoever, of course, we get more allergens. And I was really alarmed by what you showed, Claudia, with the CO2 chambers, where you can analyze plant growth, for example. And botanists know that with high CO2 levels, plants absorb less iron from the ground. And iron is also very important for the plant survival. Very, very analogous to the humans, actually. So pathogenesis-related proteins are kind of acute phase proteins that handle iron. Yeah. And when they are running out of iron, they're getting empty, more allergenic. So maybe we should discuss this in more detail, but you have a beautiful system that mirrors what is going on out there in our greenhouse atmosphere.
Thanks, yeah.
There is Johannes, there is a question from Roberto. Roberto,
yes, I see that our vice president is here, Roberto. I wanted to call you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi everybody. Thank you very much for this wonderful meeting. And since actually my comment is more like a comment, I saw at Claudia's presentation, there's a map of the world, and it always, it's like one of the areas that people are very interested in is the Amazon. It's like the whole Amazon region is burning, and it's always goes into that kind of narrative. And I would like to say that this weekend we're going to have a meeting in a city right in the middle of the Amazon to discuss atopic dermatitis in that region, because you would think that they have much more atopic dermatitis, but in fact, from my colleagues from that area, they say most cases are mild, and rarely they see very severe cases. But anyway, I hope to bring some data from that trip, from this meeting, and maybe you can comment on this perception that the Amazon is to blame for all this, the climate change. I know it's a controversial thing, but it happens. Thank you.
Good, Roberto. You bring some arguments to my question. Is there only a dark side to the story? You have maybe a positive side in the Amazon. Maybe you should get some good data about this.
Yes, I hope so. Okay, thank you.
Well, we all know the importance of digitalization, but obviously we are not so much expert to find a good question for Alexander Zink. So, but following Alain Taïeb's question, maybe very clearly, Dr. Zink, do you have data on temperature and atopic dermatitis? Is there, in all those Google or something, is there some correlation that there is more when it's hot, or what would be a general hypothesis, I would say? Is Mr. Zink still there?
No, I think
I don't see Alexander anymore. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I came too late. Sorry.
No, but I think we can write the question.
No. Okay, I just wanted that we don't forget him, you know.
So perhaps I can answer this, because we are currently doing these investigations. Actually, we have data from patients and also insurances, and we are correlating this with extreme weather events. So when we are meeting next time, perhaps we have already the data on this.
Okay, good.
I think we can go to the conclusion, Johannes. Maybe we can.
Yes,
finish.
No, I would have a question to the last speaker, Dr. Vettelschloss. Why did you take insect bites? Is this the most important problem of a horse, or I'm not a veterinarian?
It's the biggest or the most common allergy in the horse, and it's affecting the whole horse, the whole skin of the whole horse. So it's very visible, and a lot of horses suffer from this. So yeah, it's also
And
what is
When will your drug be available? Can we already buy it as a horse owner?
No, not yet. So it will be 2 years down the line. So.
But because Librela, my little dog gets Librela. So I was wondering that the veterinarians are rather fast, you know, because there's nothing like this for pain in the human.
Yeah, that's true. But like coming to the horse, I think it's rather a difficult one, because when the horse gets something against the pain, it starts to run, and then it uses more the joints, and then it's maybe progressing more the osteoarthritis or so. So I'm not so convinced if this is a good idea for the horse.
Alain, you want me to conclude a little bit?
There is a last question from Roberto.
There is another question from Roberto, and I think I will conclude after you with Pascal.
Okay.
The whole session. Okay.
Hello, I'm sorry. I think I didn't have any questions. Sorry, maybe there's a repeat of the last one.
Pascal.
Your microphone is
you are mute.
Yeah, I like to speak alone. So a conclusion on that is that there is still a lot of work for the vets on the influence of environment on atopic dermatitis and the influence of the food too, and the way of life. And I'm almost sure that we can copy a lot of things from all what was presented here. And I would like also to end with the hope from the work of Antonia, because the vaccine to cytokine is really something which is less expensive than monoclonal antibodies even in a smaller animal than horse, and there is a lot of hope on this area.
Well, I totally agree. I think this was a very, very fascinating and highly interesting symposium. We had a conference, and it touched a lot of very important questions, and not only medicine, but also, well, the whole planet. But it was not only theoretical, we got some quite practical recommendations or practical approaches to treat or to develop new things, to prevent things. So I think we all will go home full of new ideas. And I want to give the last word to our president, Alain Taillé.
Thanks very much, Johannes. I was also very interested by the opinion of our colleagues from WHO. I see that Diana is still on the screen, and maybe I don't know, Jose is online, because of the question raised is, of course, atopic dermatitis compatible with One Health, or is One Health a valid approach for atopic dermatitis? What are your general comments on this?
Perhaps, Jose, you can help me on this. I think just listening to the different speakers today just shows us that already we are taking a One Health approach and trying to solve these complex issues. We don't have the full puzzle. And I think this is just a nice way of showing us where we are. I mean, looking at it from so many different perspectives just in this 2 hours has been so enriching. But it just shows us that there is still so much to do. So yes, I think there is a space. We're learning as we go. I think the planetary health discussion that was also presented brings things into context in such a broad way. So we're learning together. We need more data, and I think connecting the dots will be essential. WHO is using the evidence and the data out there to help countries make policy. So for us, learning from you and taking it to bring recommendations to countries will be the role that we can provide in this as we move forward. So thanks a lot for giving Diana and I the opportunity to participate, and truly enriching. Thank you.
Okay, Jose has or maybe Diana has a word before the conclusion.
After Diana.
No, it's I don't have anything to add to all the professionals.
Jose?
Yes, I think from my side, what I would like to emphasize that this is a critical area of work for which I think we are not, I would say, well equipped at WHO to address it. We don't have the technical expertise or the time to really focus into that, especially in our department. So I think it would be very important and very useful to have further discussions with ISAT and the team of experts to see which gaps can realistically be addressed from WHO, or what can WHO do, identify 1, 2, 3 things where WHO could be an added value, either to advocate, to create a global health observatory item on these things, something that WHO has a concrete action to take, but keeping it realistic given our financial and human resources that are available. That is what I would say. Thank you. You are muted, I think, Alain.
Alain, we don't hear you.
So Claudia, you wanted to say a word?
Yes, I wanted to raise a very important point, because atopic dermatitis and allergies are not officially accepted as non-communicable diseases. And I would like to address this to WHO, because I think we would need this in order to, and I think the evidence is clear. Allergies and atopic dermatitis, they are environmentally triggered. Pollution is a very important trigger, so they should be accepted as non-communicable diseases. And this is something, when I would have a wish list to you, to WHO, this would be priority one, because we need this acceptance as NCD of atopic diseases, allergies, and atopic dermatitis.
So if I may then, WHO has now issued a new ICD code. Is that what you're referring to as well? That it should be included as a specific item in the ICD code. There is also an opportunity online, if you went to the ICD website, to actually give those comments. We will take it back and provide it to our departments handling non-communicable diseases. In fact, our division is non-communicable and communicable diseases. But that doesn't often, that process is slow. We'll tell them, but they might not do anything. So often using your outside stakeholders and the commenting through the public consultation through the website will make your voices heard directly. So I would encourage you to go to the ICD website, and we will do so from this end.
Thanks.
Well, thanks, Jose and Claudia, and also this nice suggestion from you also, Bernadette, to move in that direction. One of the objectives of this workshop was, of course, to try to pave the way to some further work, and in close collaboration with, of course, different specialties, like, for example, human and veterinary medicine, epidemiology, and so on. But I think a first step maybe would be to have like a draft of today's symposium, and I proposed, and I received your approval to have a position paper on this subject, because I think we asked the question. The answers are not there, but I think it's important to put more clearly on the paper what came out of this meeting. So I thank you all very much, and I hope that we will correspond soon about this position paper. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Talk more about it in the coming days and weeks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Very interesting. Bye-bye.